A 73-year-old great-grandmother with a banned opposition flag. She has been a regular at these protests. Now she's detained by masked men. And police arrested dozens of other peaceful demonstrators at this women's march. Since August, thousands of protesters have been detained. Many opposition leaders have been jailed or forced into exile. That's as President Alexander Lukashenko tries to suppress the biggest and most persistent challenge to his 26-year rule. And his crackdown drew more criticism at the virtual General Assembly of the United Nations in New York. Sweden's Prime Minister called the situation alarming and urged the Belarusian leader to negotiate with the opposition.
The increased repression of peaceful demonstrators, journalists and opposition leaders is unacceptable. We stand in solidarity with the Belarusian people in their desire to exercise their fundamental democratic rights. We continue to call on the Belarusian leadership to stop the repression and engage in genuine dialogue with the opposition.
Earlier this week, countries bordering Belarus also weighed in. The leaders of Lithuania, Poland and Latvia used their speeches to criticize Minsk. But on Saturday, Belarus fought back. The country's foreign minister accused Western powers of trying to destabilize the country. Statements brimming with cynicism have been made by a number of our Western colleagues about their alleged concern for Belarusian sovereignty and well-being. In actual fact, they are nothing other than attempts to bring chaos and anarchy to our country, to make Belarus lose many years of development. The European Union is still threatening sanctions, including asset freezes and travel bans, to punish those responsible for electoral fraud and the violent crackdown on protesters. But the 27-nation bloc has not followed through yet, leaving the protesters at the mercy of increasingly repressive Belarusian authorities.
For more on this ongoing situation, I'm joined by our correspondent Nick Connolly in Minsk. Nick, week after week, we see these protests. They show no sign of letting up, despite increasing crackdown attempts by Lukashenko. What are the consequences for the many people who are being pulled off the streets by the military and police?
Well, on average, the kind of average sentence we're seeing here, 10 to 15 days in jail, but some are let out the same day. But I think it's wider than this. People are being slapped with fines, they're losing their jobs, they're being told by their employers, state employers, as also private sector employers, that if they're out protesting again, they'll have to be asked to leave their jobs. We've seen an activist last week who was deprived of her child for a few days. She was kept in for police questioning, wasn't able to pick up her child from school. The authorities went straight to the school to pick up the child and take it to a children's home without even trying to contact her relatives. So that was definitely a warning shot to protesters, even if they don't turn out to protest with their children. Just by being a protester at what is known as an unsanctioned protest, no opposition protest obviously sanctioned in this country, is a direct threat to your children. And I think the important thing here is even if you're not picked up on the day of the protest, you are being filmed by the authorities here, and they've made very clear that once the situation, if it were to calm down, they would then go after people one by one with the footage that they've collected and really create problems for people who have dared to express their protest.
Now, the opposition say they want to inaugurate their leader, Svetlana Tsikhanovskaya, today as the symbolic people's president. What's that going to look like? I think the easy simple answer is we don't quite know. This has definitely been a very nervous week here in Minsk after that surprise inauguration by Lukashenko on a weekday with no warning, not shown on any state TV channels, out of the blue. People definitely angry and shocked and wanting to express that protest. Having said that, Minsk, as always on Sundays, full of police in riot gear, full of military technology. Quite how far they're going to be allowed to protest and how many people will be detained, we can't know, but certainly lots of people very angry and wanting to express their disagreement. Thank you, Nick Connolly, in what sounds like a very windy Minsk today.